Young Scrooge, A Very Scary Christmas Story by R.L. Stine. Part 3. Chapter 14. After school, I tugged on my heavy overcoat and followed the others outside. I saw Benjamin, Prescott, and Emily Ann walking together along a narrow path cut into the deep snow. The bare trees rattled in a cold wind. The three kids wore long overcoats buttoned to the collar. Their heavy shoes crunched on the hard snow. I called to them. "Wait up!" They turned, shifting the straps of their leather book bags. "It's the Stoogemen," Prescott said, grinning. I ran up to them, slipping on the icy ground. "Are you walking home?" I asked. "We take a shortcut through the woods," Emily Ann said. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I asked. Prescott rolled his eyes. We were standing in the shadow of a low, flat-roofed shed behind the school. It smelled really bad. I realized it was the school bathroom. Large blackbirds pecked at the ground all around us. Even though the afternoon sun was still high in the sky, a pale white sliver of a moon appeared low over the bare trees. "What do you want, Stoogeman?" Benjamin asked. He reached out and messed up my hair with his hands. Then I turned to Emily Ann. "Think that ink will ever come out?" "Probably not," she said. "That was a tragic accident," Prescott said. All three of them burst out laughing. "Can I have your moccasins?" Benjamin asked, pointing at them. "I've always wanted real Indian moccasins." "They're not moccasins," I said. "They're Air Jordans. Sneakers, I told you." "They might fit me," Benjamin said. "Give them to me." "No way," I said. "Give them to me and you can be my best friend," he said. That made the other two laugh. "Listen, I know what you're doing," I said. "This is the kind of thing I do to kids back home. But please, you've got to help me." "Help you out of your moccasins?" Benjamin asked. He grabbed my leg and started to reach for my shoe. "No, wait, please." If it came to a fight, I could probably take Benjamin, I thought. But Prescott is too big. He'll flatten me. "I need help," I said. "You see, I don't belong here." Prescott rolled his eyes again. "We've been trying to tell you that." "No," I said. "You don't understand. I don't live here. I come from the future. See how I'm dressed? That's how we dress in the future." "Too bad," Emily Ann muttered. "People dress in funny colors in the future?" Prescott asked. "And wear cloth elf shoes?" I nodded. "You probably don't believe me," I said. "But—" "That's the smartest thing you've said," Benjamin interrupted. "We don't believe you." "How can I convince you?" I said. "I'll tell you some other things we wear. We wear a lot of t-shirts." "Shirts to wear to tea," Emily Ann said. "Why would you wear a special shirt to tea?" I let out a long sigh. I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with these kids. All three of them stared at me with tight grins on their faces. Of course they believed I was crazy. I took a deep breath and tried again. "I really need your help," I said. "I know it's hard to believe, but I don't live in your time. I live in the 21st century." "And do you come from up there?" Prescott said. He pointed up to the moon. All three of them laughed. "That explains why you were so strange," Emily Ann said. "You come from the moon. We should have guessed it. And are you going to fly back up to the moon for dinner tonight?" "He's a moon man. He flies home to the moon every night," Benjamin said. "That's why we've never seen him in the village." "Where do you live?" Emily Ann asked. I don't know," I answered. They laughed again. Where did I live? The ghost never told me. Maybe I didn't have a place to live. Maybe he wanted me to freeze to death in the snow. "Please," I begged. I know. I never begged for anything in my life. Other kids begged me for things, but I couldn't help it. I was desperate. "Please, you don't have to believe me, but I need you to help me." "Remember that crazy book I read?" Emily Ann said to Prescott. "It was a story about how they made an enormous cannon and shot 3 men to the moon. Mr. Dulwich said he read it too." Prescott slapped me on the back. "Okay, Stoogeman, we'll find a big gun and shoot you to the moon." "Stop it," I said. "I told you, I don't live on the moon. I live in Illinois, in the 21st century." "Do you have a fever?" Benjamin asked. "You could see Dr. Honeycutt in the village." I sighed again. "I guess you can't help me. I just thought maybe you could tell me how to get away from here. Maybe get to a big city. Maybe—" My voice trailed off. I was trapped back in the 1800s. I suddenly thought about Charlie and Mom. Were they looking for me? Were they worried to death because I had disappeared? Would I ever see them again? And what about my Christmas presents? What would Mom do with them if I wasn't there? I almost had tears in my eyes. I'd never felt so sad in my life. "I can help you," Prescott said, breaking into my frightening thoughts. I blinked. "You can?" "Time travel," he said. "That's what you want. Time travel. Like in one of those crazy novels." I nodded. "Yes, that's it. That's what I need." Emily Ann and Benjamin exchanged glances. Prescott kept his eyes on me. "I can help you with that," he said. "Meet me right here tonight after dinner." Chapter 15. That night, I waited for Prescott on the path behind the school. Even in the heavy overcoat, I hugged myself against the cold blast of wind that sent swirls of snow flying all around. The pale moon was high in the sky now, and the wintry bare trees rattled and shook as if they were shivering too. My teeth were chattering by the time Prescott arrived, tromping over the deep snow in his knee boots. He was followed by Emily Ann and Benjamin, both wearing tall fur hats, their heads down, bending into the wind. Silvery light washed down over all of us. No other light anywhere. I felt as if I were walking in a dream of silver light and purple shadows. I kept waiting for the ghost to appear. I kept thinking he would come and ask me if I'd learned my lesson about the golden rule. And I'd say, "Yes, of course I have. I've learned a lot, and I'm ready to go home." Maybe that was a lie, but in my daydream, the ghost believed me and instantly took me home. Daydreams usually don't come true. The ghost was nowhere to be seen. And here I was, shivering in the dark, squinting at the three kids in their black overcoats and fur hats, desperate for them to help me. "Do you really know something about time travel?" I asked Prescott. He nodded. "I do. We're going to take you to the time tunnel, Scroogeman. We're going to send you home." My chest suddenly felt tight. My heart began pounding. Should I believe him? I had to. I had to believe he really knew how to send me back where I belonged. The other two kids didn't say a word. They kept their heads down. When they raised them, I saw the solemn expressions on their faces. This was serious stuff. No kidding around. For a moment, I felt like leaping up in the air and cheering. I had the urge to bump knuckles with all three of my new friends. But of course, that would only confuse them. No one bumped knuckles in this time. They didn't seem to touch at all. "Follow me," Prescott said, his voice just above a whisper. We started to follow the path. No one spoke. The only sounds were the rattling of the trees, the howls of the swirling wind, and the crunch of our shoes on the snow. The path cut through a patch of trees, and then over a wide flat clearing. In the distance, I saw a small farmhouse, flickering orange light in one window. It vanished in the darkness as we kept moving. How far did we walk? I can't tell. My brain was spinning with thoughts about time travel and returning home. We came to a snow-covered rail fence and stopped. "Climb over," Prescott instructed me. "This is Morgan's farm. The time travel tunnel is here, but no one ever dares go near it. Everyone in the village is afraid." My heart started to pound even harder. I knew I was close now. I gripped the top rail and hoisted myself over the fence. The other three followed. As we started to walk again, a long, low building came into view, black against the gray-black sky. The building clung to the ground like a tunnel, and I knew this was it. This was my way home. I was breathing hard as we stepped up to one end of the long building. I could see a wooden doorway with crisscross slats in the center of the wall. "This is the tunnel through time," Prescott said in a whisper. I could barely hear him above the rush of the wind. "Good luck," Emily Ann murmured. Benjamin remained silent. He hung back as if he were afraid to come too close. "You need to take a running start," Prescott instructed me. "Lower your head and run full speed. I'll swing the door open. Don't stop. Run as hard as you can." I nodded. "I will," I said, my voice trembling. "Thank you. Thank you all for bringing me here." Prescott placed a hand on my shoulder. "We wanted to send you where you belong," he said. "Now go. Go fast." He strode to the wide wooden door and signaled for me to run. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I lowered my head and forced my legs to move. The door swung open, and I ran into the blackness of the tunnel. Ran faster than I'd ever run in my life. Chapter 16. As I stormed into the building, I was hit by a blast of hot air. The ground was soft. My shoes slid in soft mud. I struggled to keep my balance as I roared forward. It was darker than the night in here. I I couldn't see a thing. A sharp aroma greeted me, heavy and sour. I heard soft cries, animal bleats. My shoes pounded the soft goo. I heard a splash and lurched forward. My hand shot up as I lost my balance. My sneakers slapped the mud but couldn't catch hold. I fell hard, fell face forward. My body hit the soft wet ground. My head burrowed into the mud, and I slid, suddenly aware of the putrid odor, the foul odor of the air, of the mud, a powerful smell that made me choke and gag. Stunned, I raised my head from the muck. Animal grunts and squeals surrounded me. I struggled to my feet. My clothes were covered in thick mud. The mud caked my face and my hair. I had landed on my hands. They throbbed and ached as I rubbed the mud off of them on the front of my overcoat. A flickering light behind me made me spin around. I was gasping for air, but I inhaled the sick smell with each breath. My whole body shook. Where was I? The orange-yellow light grew brighter as a man approached. He was big and broad and stern-faced, carrying a flaming torch. He wore a gray flannel shirt under a huge pair of overalls. His bulging belly bounced with each step. He didn't take his gaze off me as he stepped carefully through the mud and around the deep puddles. Finally, he stopped and held the torch high, studying me in its circle of light. "What are you doing in my pig pen?" he demanded in a booming voice. I gasped. "Pig pen?" He looked me up and down. "You're covered in slops. You're going to smell for a year." Suddenly, in the light from the torch, I could see the enormous pigs lined up on both sides of me. About 24 fat pigs all staring at me, honking and bleating. The smell. Yes, the smell. The thick muck stuck to my clothes, my face, my hair. I pulled a soft rotted corn cob from under my collar. My stomach lurched. I was about to puke. I forced it down. "The other kids," I choked out. "They told me to run in here and—" He spun around. "Other kids? I didn't see any other kids out there." "The 3 kids from school," I said. "They brought me here. They said—" I didn't finish my sentence. I dodged the big farmer and ran to the pig pen door, my sneakers slapping up mud. I burst outside, shouting, "Hey! Where are you? Hey!" No one there. The frozen air hit me and made me gasp. The moon had disappeared behind the clouds. I squinted into the total darkness. No one. I knew what they had done. It didn't take me long to figure it out. The joke was on me. I was so desperate to escape, I had fallen for it. Or rather, I had fallen right into it. A pig pen. Not a time tunnel. A filthy, smelly pig pen. Had they taught me a lesson with their mean joke? I was too cold and mud-caked and putrid-smelling to think about it. Torchlight washed over me. I turned to find the farmer standing behind me. "You'd better go home, son," he said. "Where do you live?" I shook my head sadly. "Nowhere," I said. "I don't live anywhere. Can I come in your home and take a bath?" He squinted at me. "Afraid not. I can't let you in my house. You smell too bad. But you can sleep here in the pig pen tonight, if you like." Suddenly, the pigs all started honking and bleating, as if they didn't want me either. Chapter 17. Luckily, the farmer took pity on me and changed his mind. He let me sleep on a wood cot in his back room. I scrubbed myself at his pump in the kitchen. His wife was kind enough to lend me a nightshirt as she washed my clothes. Lying on the hard cot, shivering under the thin blanket they had given me, I couldn't get to sleep. I peered out the tiny back window, up at the pale moon as it slid in and out of the clouds. I knew why the ghost of Christmas past had brought me back to this awful place, to learn about the golden rule, and all that junk about why it's better to be a nice boy. But all I could think about was revenge. I thought of scheme after scheme, but I decided none of them would work. It would be seriously impossible to get revenge on Prescott, Benjamin, and Emily Ann, because they lived here, and knew everyone at school, and knew the village, and I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't even have a place to live. But maybe I could at least get them in a little trouble at school, I told myself. I decided I'd tell Mr. Dulwich that the 3 of them kidnapped me and threw me into a pig pen because I'm the new kid. At least he would give them a strong lecture about that. The next morning, I thanked the farmer and his wife. I raced to school, my open coat flapping behind me, my sneakers crunching on the hardened snow. The red morning sun reflected off the snow. The wind had stopped swirling. The bare trees stood perfectly still. I was breathing hard as I reached the school building. The front hall was empty. I realized I was early. I stopped and caught my breath before going into Mr. Dulwich's classroom. He was at the back of the room, leaning over a small Christmas tree. I saw that he was attaching slender white candles to the branches. His black suit jacket was unbuttoned. His pointy collar stuck up from his shirt. His eyeglasses glistened from the sunlight pouring in through the window. He turned as I stepped into the room. "Mr. Dulwich?" I started. He cleared his throat. "Can I help you, young man?" I need to report 3 students," I said. I took a few steps closer. I hadn't expected to feel this tense. "They grabbed me last night and forced me to spend the night in a pig pen." It was almost true. Maybe I made it sound a little worse than it was. Why should I tell them they had tricked me? Mr. Dulwich set down a candle and pushed the glasses up on his nose. 3 students? From my class? Why did they do that to you?" "They didn't like me, I guess," I replied. "They said they didn't like new kids." He nodded. "Can you tell me their names?" "Yes," I said. "Prescott, Benjamin, and Emily Ann." His eyebrows went up. "Please repeat those names, young man." So I repeated them. "I believe you've made a mistake," he said. "Perhaps you were in the wrong classroom." "No way," I replied. "I was here yesterday. They were here too, and—" Mr. Dulwich shook his head. "No, not here. I am afraid I have no students named Prescott, Benjamin, or Emily Ann." Chapter 18. "Of course you do," I insisted. "They sat near the front and—" Mr. Dulwich took long strides to his desk. His heavy shoes made the floorboard squeak. He shoved aside some papers on his desk and raised a black notebook. I stepped up to the desk. "Is that your class list?" He nodded and shoved the open book toward me. "This is my attendance book. You can see with your own eyes," he said. "There are no students in my class named Prescott, Benjamin, or Emily Ann." I let my eyes run down the list. He was telling the truth. I suddenly had a heavy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I had to force myself to breathe. What is going on down here? Mr. Dulwich said something, but my thoughts were too loud. I couldn't hear him. He squeezed the sleeve of my overcoat. "Young man, I asked you a question. What is your name?" "Rick Scroogeman," I said. "Remember? I'm the new kid. I arrived yesterday." He took the attendance book from my hand, and his finger rolled down the list of his students. He took his time, reading carefully. Finally, he raised his eyes to me. "I'm afraid you aren't in my class either, Mr. Scroogeman." But, I sputtered like a motorboat. The heavy feeling in my stomach spread to my whole body. "You should check Mr. Harrison's class," he said, closing the book. "Perhaps since you are new." "No," I said. "I'm not in another class. I'm in your class." He shrugged. "Sorry, you're not here." "Then where am I?" I cried. "Nowhere," he said softly. And as he said that word, he faded away. Nowhere. The word lingered in my mind and repeated. Nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. Mr. Dulwich vanished slowly, and the classroom faded with him. His desk shimmered, and then was gone. The colors seeped from the walls until I was surrounded by gray. Solid gray everywhere I turned. The little Christmas tree was the last thing I saw. And then there I stood, like I was suspended in space, in a solid, silent world of gray. No shades. All the same color. Until I didn't know if I was seeing or not. Didn't know if my eyes were open or closed. Then, when someone grabbed my shoulder, I opened my mouth and screamed. Chapter 19. I spun around and cut off my scream as I saw a short, pudgy man in a black and white checkered suit beside me. He had a funny face. I mean, the kind of face that makes you laugh. A big pink light bulb of a nose, and round black owl eyes, and a tiny red mouth shaped like a heart. He had ringlets of curly orange hair falling from beneath a tall, shiny black top hat. He wore a red bow tie and had a matching red flower in the lapel of his checkered jacket. The flower looked like the kind that squirts water. "Are you ready to come with me, Scroogeman?" he said. He had a high voice and kind of sang the words instead of speaking them. "Who are you supposed to be?" I demanded. His round cheeks turned red. So did his bulby nose. I am the ghost of Christmas Present, he said in his odd sing-song. For a moment, he disappeared into the gray. Then he came back in full color. You're the ghost of Christmas presents? I said. Did you bring me my Christmas presents? He flickered again and nearly disappeared. I am the ghost of Christmas Present, he said. I shall take you to your family, if you have learned the lessons of the past. My heart skipped a beat. You'll take me to my family? Really? I cried happily. Oh, yes, I've learned a lot. I learned a lot of lessons from the past. Okay, I was lying. You know it, and I know it. But he didn't have to know it, did he? He stared hard at me, so hard his big bulby nose twitched. And what lessons have you learned, Scroogeman? Well, think fast, think fast. I learned to be a good guy, and always be nice to people, and to think about other people's feelings, not just my own. The ghost crossed his arms in front of him. I thought you were a better liar than that, he said. Oh, I am, I replied. Just give me a chance. What did you really learn? The ghost asked. Not to go running into a pig pen at night. He gripped my shoulder again. His grip wasn't gentle. He tightened his fingers until I flinched. Ow! I'm taking you to your family, Scroogeman, he said. You have much to learn in the present day. I get to go back to Mom and Charlie? I asked. He didn't reply. He stared straight forward. We started to drop. I gasped. We were falling fast, falling straight down through the solid gray. The cold air came up to meet us. It was like falling through clouds. That was a dream I had a lot. Just falling straight down through clouds. Falling, never landing. The ghost's top hat flew off his head. His hand dug into my shoulder. We plunged down, then started to slow. Colors swirled up in the gray. Bright flashes of green and blue and red. So bright I shut my eyes. When I opened them, I was standing on something solid. A floor in a living room. My eyes took a long time to focus. I saw a green carpet, stained and torn. The walls were covered in a green wallpaper. Some of it was curling off at the top. Blinking hard, I saw a scrawny Christmas tree behind a low black couch. It had an angel tilted at the top, and only a few tree decorations hanging on its skinny branches. A single flame flickered in the fireplace. A Merry Christmas banner hung crookedly over the mantel. The ghost of Christmas Present was pushing down his wiry orange hair with both hands. Without his top hat, his hair had blown in all directions during our fall. I tapped him on one arm. Whoa, you got it wrong, I said. This isn't my house. You've made a big mistake. Ghosts don't make mistakes, he replied. I've never heard of a ghost making a mistake. Marley's ghost made a mistake, I said. He tried to haunt the wrong house. Who is Marley? The ghost asked. Am I supposed to know him? Forget about him, I said. I don't live here. Look at this place. It's a dump. He pursed his tiny heart-shaped lips. This is your home now, Scroogeman. It's very different from your home. I'm hoping it'll make you appreciate your old life. I do, I protested. I do appreciate my old life. Take me to my house. I'll appreciate it. I swear. My hope is that your new family will show you how you are mistaken about Christmas, the ghost said, fiddling with his red bow tie. I think they can show you the true meaning of the holiday. I tugged at his sleeve. And if I learn it, can I go back to my family? He narrowed his eyes at me. You have a lot to learn before you can ever think of going back. Those words sent a chill to the back of my neck. The ghost turned away from me. He motioned toward the small dining room. This is your family now, Scroogeman. I saw a ragged-looking man and woman, and a pale, scrawny girl, who was about 8 or 9. They were standing awkwardly at the dining room table. The woman had scraggly brown hair falling down the sides of her narrow, lined face. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. She wore a long brown house dress under a square white apron. The apron was dotted with brown and yellow stains. The man was thin, and tired-looking too. His back was a little bent. He leaned on a wooden cane. His streaky gray hair was pulled behind his head in a stub of a ponytail. He wore a black sweatshirt over baggy maroon sweatpants. The girl was kind of cute. She had wavy brown blonde hair and big blue eyes. She wore a blue smiley-faced t-shirt pulled down over faded denim jeans, torn at both knees. She kept motioning impatiently to me. She wanted me to come over to them, but I turned to the ghost. Please, take me out of here. It's Christmas Eve. Take me to my real family. Please. Merry Christmas, Scroogeman, he said. Then he vanished. I felt a pop of cold air, and he was gone. Come to the table, Scroogeman, the woman said. You're late. You know it's time for Christmas Eve dinner. Come sit down, sonny boy, the man said. If you stand there any longer, I'll swat you. I swear I will. Sonny boy. They acted as if they knew me, as if I really belonged in their family. I was suddenly starving. My stomach grumbled. I couldn't remember the last time I had a meal. I crossed the shabby living room to the dining room. Okay, I'll play along, I said. What's for dinner? The woman gave me a thin smile. We are each going to have a juicy, ripe plum. Chapter 20. Was there something wrong with my hearing? Did she just say we were going to have a plum for Christmas dinner? I let out a sigh and walked over to them. Where should I sit? I asked. Scroogeman, stop acting the clown, the mother said. You know where you sit. Why are you acting so strange tonight? Because it's Christmas Eve? I took a chance and sat down next to the girl. Her name was Ashley. I figured it out because that's what her parents kept calling her. She kept poking me with one finger and tickling my ribs when the parents weren't looking, just like a little sister. Didn't she know I don't belong here? The table was nearly bare. The 4 dinner plates didn't match. On each plate, I saw a purple plum. Are we having turkey or ham after the plum? I asked. My new father scowled at me. Scroogeman, we are having a plum for dinner, and let's be grateful for that. My stomach rumbled again. That's all? A plum? I cried. My voice cracked. Slice it very thin, and it'll go a long way, my new mom said. Show 'em, Ashley. Ashley picked up her knife and began cutting her plum into very thin slices. This looks so juicy, she said. I love Christmas Eve dinner. We always have a turkey and a ham, I said, and a big layer cake for dessert. In your dreams? The dad said. He pushed a slice of plum into his mouth and chewed it as if it were a chunk of steak. Is that what you dream about, Scroogeman? The mom sighed. A tall layer cake. Yes, that's something to dream about. Maybe someday. Her voice trailed off. I sliced my plum the way Ashley did. I took a bite. Mine wasn't quite ripe, but I didn't care. I was so hungry, I planned to eat the pit. I finished my plum in about 10 seconds. When Ashley turned away, I grabbed 3 or 4 slices off of her plate, and I ate those too. Hey, she shouted angrily. Mom, Scroogeman ate some of my plum. It's Christmas, dear, the mom scolded. Be generous. Mom turned to me. What else do you dream about? I dream about my Christmas presents, I said. Well, I have a nice present for the 2 of you, the dad said. It isn't anything special. You know how hard it's been for me at the factory, especially with my bad back. He climbed to his feet and crossed the room. He picked up 2 small items from the top of a cabinet. He handed one to Ashley and one to me. A smile spread over his face. These were made with love, he said, made with my own 2 hands. I gazed at mine. It was a tiny piece of molded plastic, very smooth, shaped like an old-fashioned whistle, painted blue with smile emojis up and down it. Ashley's was just like mine, only painted green. I raised my eyes to Dad, who was still smiling. What are they? I asked. Keychains. They let me use the 3D printer at the factory, and I made them, my own design. I love it, Ashley cried. She jumped up and hugged her dad. Yeah, awesome, I said. Thanks. Awesome present. I tucked it into my jeans pocket. Maybe someday you'll have keys to put on them, the mom said. I slipped the last plum slice off Ashley's plate and swallowed it before she could try to grab it back. And that's it for presents? I said, thinking of the big stack of gifts in the closet back home. Christmas is a time of giving, Mom said, flashing me a sad smile. We've always taught you that, Scroogeman. But you're not giving us anything else? I said. We gave some of your clothes and some of your old games and books away, Ashley said. We gave them to... You what? I cried. To those less fortunate than us, she finished her sentence. I stared at her. My mouth hung open. Was that the lesson I was supposed to learn about Christmas? To give my stuff away? They had to be joking. We just had a plum for dinner, and we got plastic keychains for gifts. And they were talking about people less fortunate? Are you kidding me? Are you ready for our Christmas Eve dessert? Mom asked. She disappeared into the kitchen. She returned a few seconds later carrying a plate of green grapes. My favorite! Ashley cried, clapping her hands. What a weirdo. Mom dropped 4 grapes on each plate. Enjoy, she said. Dad took his knife and sliced each grape into 2 halves. Then he ate the halves slowly, holding them up one by one, chewing each one a long time. Now let's do our annual Christmas tradition, he said. Let's go around the table and tell what we are grateful for. Excuse me? Was I supposed to be grateful for a plum and 4 grapes? Dad started to talk about what he was grateful for. It had something to do with his back being better. I didn't listen. I was staring at something hanging on the kitchen wall. Squinting into the kitchen, I saw the calendar stuck on the side of a cabinet. And when I saw the year, I had to force myself not to utter a cry, not to pump my fist in the air and leap onto the table and do a celebration dance. It was this year. The ghost hadn't lied. I really was in the present. I was back in the right year, back where I belonged. And as my new mom yammered on about something she was happy about, I instantly realized what I was happy about. I was happy that I could escape from this house and go home. No problem. I just wait till they're asleep. I run out of this tacky falling apart house. I find someone who will lend me a phone. I call my real mom, and she comes and gets me. How easy is that? It wouldn't take long before I was home with my mom and Charlie, in time to celebrate my birthday and Christmas, and eat till I burst, and enjoy all my presents, and Charlie's too. Ashley poked me in my ribs, jarring me from my happy thoughts. Go ahead, Scroogeman. We're waiting for you. I gazed around the table. What? We're waiting, she said. What are you thankful for? Well, I thought hard. What was the right answer? I'm just thankful to be able to enjoy Christmas Eve dinner with my wonderful family, I said. That brought smiles to all their faces. Score 1 for Rick Scroogeman. Scroogeman is right, Ashley said. People have to care about each other, whether they're rich or as poor as our family. People have to love each other and stick together. Yes, stick together, I said. I'm all about that, Ashley. For sure. I'm all over that, you know. Sticking together is totally my thing. Of course, I was thinking of only one thing. Escape. I'm thankful to be getting out of this dump, and I'm thankful to never have a plum and a few grapes for dinner again. Goodbye and good luck. Ashley helped her parents clear the dinner table. There wasn't much to clear. I mean, there hadn't been any food on the table. I stood up and stretched. I wonder how early my new mom and dad go to bed. I planned to escape this place as soon as they were asleep. Let's go, Scroogeman. Come on, before it gets dark. Ashley tugged my hand. Get your coat. Huh? Where are we going? I asked. She jerked my arm. Don't act dumb. You know where we're going. To build our Christmas Eve snowmen. She pulled on a ragged gray hoodie and dragged me to the front door. I guess that building snowmen was another family tradition I didn't know about. I pulled on a coat I found in the front closet and followed Ashley outside. It was a cold, windy evening. A red sun was lowering behind the trees. I saw a row of tiny houses, all very close together, lined up across the street behind small, square front yards. This was definitely a poor neighborhood, but all the houses had Christmas lights and decorations in their front windows. I shivered. The snow in the front yard was at least a foot deep and very crusty, good for packing. I couldn't resist. I grabbed up a big handful of snow and molded it into a snowball. Then I cried out, "Think fast!" and smashed it into Ashley's face. I held it there, rubbing it over her cheeks and eyes. She sputtered and spit and started to choke. It was a riot. She was totally surprised. I backed up quickly. I knew she'd try and pay me back. But no, she wiped the icy snow off her face, then pulled her hoodie tighter over her hair. "Don't mess around, Scroogeman," she snapped. "It's going to be dark soon." She pointed to a spot near the curb. "You build one, and I'll build one," she said. "We need 2 of them to be on guard." I stared at her. On guard? On guard for what? I asked. She narrowed her eyes. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "You'll see," she said.